I believe the median price for a home in LA is like 1.1 million.
Yeah, I think it passed the mill.
Median?
So, yeah.
Oh my God.
That's what I heard too. I think.
That's actually, I didn't know it was more than $1 million now.
But I know because it was in comparison. It was actually from the book Abundance by Ezra Klein, which we'll probably talk about next week. But talking about how the price of a home in America is just obscenely overpriced, at least in most of the like blue cities right now.
The metro areas.
Right. The metro areas. Yeah.
Wow. There's a bunch of factors, and I'll kind of layer this into two main things that I saw. So for rural Japan, where you could get these abandoned houses, right? There is a decline in population. Like as time has passed, really concentrated movement of people from rural areas of Japan into cities, just like a lot of the developed world is going through in general, right? Like that's a general population movement that happens. But Japan, it happened earlier and more aggressively. And that, on top of that, really low birth rate.
Really low birth rate.
And one of the lowest in the world. On top of this, Japan also isn't really changing its mind about immigration, at least not at a rate that matters. Like they're not welcoming in or making big efforts to get large amounts of foreigners in the country to sort of supplement the population, right?
So real quick on that. I looked into a little bit on their immigration changes.
Yeah.
My understanding is it used to basically be zero. Like nobody comes in. This is Japan only. And then the past few years, they've opened it up a lot. But are you saying that a lot is just relative?
A lot is relative.
Okay.
It's not increasing in any meaningful way. And I asked a friend while we were there who's lived there for a long time, like what is young people's perspective on letting more immigrants in to like help deal with these problems? And this applies to a lot of issues, not just like immigration, housing, or like whatever economic problems Japan is dealing with.
Yeah.
He said young people and people in Japan in general are just very, very apathetic about politics. It isn't something you publicly engage in general. And I think it's part of a general cultural like way of like how people socialize. It'd be very weird for you to talk to strangers about your honest opinions about things in the first place.
Interesting.
But then decoupling from that, I think politics is like particularly sensitive, and there isn't a culture of being attentive and involved in politics in the way that it dominates discussion in America in particular, but maybe the West in a larger sense. So basically in the rural areas, they're dealing with this problems like their supply is like increasing just by proxy of it not being used anymore.
Right.
And because there's no demand and nobody is moving to these rural areas, it basically just boils down to that. And because of that, you have these really low home prices. Like even a nice thing on the outside, like I think the misleading part of the free house is that those ones aren't nice. It's like they aren't well kept. You would have to put a lot of work into it. There are stories of Americans, because foreigners can buy property and land in Japan freely. There's like no restrictions on that. Foreigners can buy those properties. And there are stories of, for instance, Americans going and getting one of these free homes. But the amount of work that you have to put into it to make it like livable.
But I heard you
and
can't
nice.
buy it unless you move there. Like you can't. I couldn't like make an investment.
I think for the free ones, my loose understanding is for that specific program that gives out the free ones you do. But if we wanted to buy that $70,000 apartment or the a $30,000 apartment, we would be able to buy that or like the land.
It doesn't come with like a permanent residence. So you buy the property, but it's not like you can then just roll into Japan and you live there now.
Yeah.
So you still have to go through the arduous process of getting approved for a visa and then permanent residency, which is usually 10 years of living there. My friend who immigrated there was talking about how if he got kicked out, he wouldn't lose the asset of like the home he owns or the land.
I see. So you go there for 6 months. So all I have to do is keep going there every 6 months and add to my housing portfolio.
I don't even know.
In a few years on the BlackRock.
In general, in general, I think, like I said, I think the rules might be different for those like free or like near free homes.
Yeah.
But if you were just buying like a nice big home that was like pretty expensive in Tokyo, like you could just buy that and not live there.
Right.
You guys want to buy like a $1 home in the countryside and do an episode there?
Oh,
it's just the one-time studio.
That would be so sick
for the podcast.
Just dude, our Japan studio.
No, but
we're already thinking so big.
Yeah.
On this small town, and they're like, we're dying and we're running out of people. And then we have 3 new immigrants that are coming to help turn things around, and we show up for one day.
Record a podcast. They see us dunking our faces in ice water, and then we leave.
Toss the bottle on the ground and then fly out.
I would hate us so much.
That's like Logan Paul round 2 for sure.
I saw a few things that just related to the countryside stuff, which I thought were interesting because I was just looking into this a little bit. Apparently, 647 of Japan's towns and villages have been designated as depopulated areas. 60% of Japan, of the land area, is now depopulated areas where it's like there are not enough people there and they're basically losing support. And then as part of that, so all these people just over the past like 20 years, there's been this, or I mean decades, but it's increased, I guess, even more in the last 20 years, that all these people are moving from the countryside to the city, right? And so then the railroads in the countries are having to close stations. So JR Hokkaido closed 18 stations. This was last year, I believe 2024 it would be, due to low passenger demand. JR West is hurting.
That's why America was smart to do no trains.
No trains. We got it. We figured it out. Yes.
We knew there'd be a crisis.
That way when we stop having babies.
We're really planning for that. We're just thinking
we're
even
long-term
further
thinkers.
ahead.
Yeah.
And then this like really kind of mind fucked me. A shift from trains to buses doesn't work because some 40% of the vehicular bridges in Japan are reaching age 50 and the local governments don't have the budget to repair them. So they're just forced to ban their use. Yes. And so countrysides are also becoming less accessible as the bridges are no longer becoming usable. And then there isn't the people or the budget to repair them. So the countryside, it's like this spiral. So yeah, you can go get one of these, $10,000 houses, but it might be hours away by car from a train station,
So I'm a bit of a Japan expert. Why don't they simply use the mechs or the mech suits that they've got? Is that not in the budget or was
Well, Britannia is still winning the war. And so most of them are in combat right now.
It's tough. It's tough.
Once Japan is in peacetime, the mech soldiers will return home and they will build the bridges.
What's interesting is not just Japan. So I looked into this too. Italy is going through pretty much bar for bar the same thing. They're a little more open to immigration, but like you can get a $0, $1 house in Italy in the countryside where anything outside of the city, it's like they have an aging population with not enough young people. People are leaving the small towns. If you go live there, they'll basically give you your house for free.
So I was going to bring up that trend as well because my friend showed me this in Sweden, rural areas in Sweden. It's the same thing. You can get a pretty nice large home in like a rural part of Sweden for maybe like $30,000 to $50,000 in like pretty good condition, lovely location, and same mechanisms behind it. Basically, just like everybody needs to move or wants to move to the city.
So like for an average person, that's not a good deal still because you're so isolated and the town is dying. But I'm wondering when someone's going to flip and people are going to move as flocks. Like if you had 8 of your friends and their families, or you all decide we're just going to take over the small town. You could get insane real estate.
This is the LA influencer problem that we talked about.
Yes, actually, this is a good example.
About how a bunch of people in LA that do YouTube
I would actually describe. I hate Los Angeles for the record.
9
out of 10 people that I've talked to, I've probably talked to 30 or 40 content creators in LA about this, have said, I hate LA. I'm only here because everybody else is here.
Exactly.
But all of us say that and nobody leaves.
But everybody has to move at once.
Me.
Because it's the value of being in the same place together.
You like it. There's a few people who like it.
He said 9 out of 10 dentists. You're the dentist saying that the toothpaste doesn't work.
Yeah, you don't need toothpaste?
You don't need toothpaste.
Rub banana peels on your teeth.
I use this. Yeah. And I use mouth tape, and my teeth are pearly.
But I do think it's really interesting that this is like so apparent in other countries as well, because that gets talked about less. Like Japan is the country that has the headline so often. I think because the problem is so much more aggressive and it's been building for longer.
Yeah.
And then the other part of this that I wanted to talk about was, rural areas, right? We're talking about in Japan, people moving to cities like Tokyo, for instance.
Sure.
But Tokyo is really interesting too, because compared to other cities in the world with I would say equal standing and development, if you look at a city like London or New York or Clancyville, you would see that Tokyo is relatively affordable compared to those places, which is really, really interesting. Like, why is this major city not going through the same real estate struggle that all those other big cities are? And because obviously in Tokyo, like in Japan, the rural areas population is declining, but Tokyo, the population is still going up.
Makes sense. Okay, yeah.
And the big thing behind this is their zoning and building laws. They have a way different approach to like how housing is allowed to be built and a different culture of expectations around how you judge or value the homes next to you. So they were starting to go through a similar like cost of living crisis in the 60s as they were developing. And they put into place a new zoning law at that time that, like in America, there's for zoning laws, we have like hundreds of different types of zones and like weight and different rules to move around within. But Tokyo only has 12 different types of zones that properties can be. And in like 10 of those 12, housing is allowed to be built in all of them. So it means that if it's zoned for like retail, if it's zoned for something else, you can still build housing in that area alongside it. And that's created like an industry and a supply of housing that is always outpacing
building more
actual
supply.
households.
Yeah, I saw a graph that was like, it showed New York and then it layered over it what buildings that are there now wouldn't be allowed to be built under current zoning laws.
Yeah.
And it was 40%. So 40% of New York that exists right now wouldn't be allowed to be built today.
This was really shocking to me.
The way it's been zoned. You can only build high-scale luxury apartments. You can only build like the highest end stuff. You can't build.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was really surprising because to me, in an American context, right? New York is pretty dense. There is a lot of like apartment style housing there that doesn't exist in like a lot of other cities. But even a place like New York has really strict
that's like
zoning
the best
laws.
of the American one.
And, and basically, those zones have like reached their capacity. And then, okay, well, you might think, let's vote to change the zoning laws. Let's change these things in order to get more housing built. And this is also something that was really interesting to me because in America, right, we vote for these things at the local level. And that's where kind of like the idea of NIMBYism comes in. Like, not in my backyard, basically. If I own property in a place, in order to maintain the growth of the value of the property that I already own, I'm going to vote against new housing initiatives in my area, maybe under the guise of like keeping the culture of the neighborhood or something, right? And so housing initiatives are consistently struck down. But in Japan, those zoning laws are just set at the national level. They just decide.
That's interesting.
So people in neighborhoods don't have the same
control over
or
like
control
who gets to build in there. That's super interesting.
And the result also, like for one more example of this, is in America, oftentimes there will be rules about the standardization of like how a house is built in a new development. So there's reasons why why groups of homes like have to match up with each other or have similar designs or require similar like lawn care or something like that. Might be through your HOA, it might be like a city ordinance. But in Japan, there's no culture of that. There's no like rules on how you can build your apartment or home next to the home next to you. It doesn't have like there's no worry about the design of your home devaluing the design of the property next to yours. Which is also, this goes in tandem with one last interesting piece that plays into this is there is a strong culture of breaking down homes and rebuilding when you buy.
Yeah.
So moving into somebody's home that was already owned and lived in is like weirdly not cool in Japan. And it's way more common to get the home, break it down, and then build a new home there for yourself.
I saw a number for this that's crazy. In 2013, guess the number, of all home purchases in Japan, how many of them are purchasing somebody's pre-built home, right? Versus you get a brand new one.
Wait, pre-built versus brand new?
As in, you buy a used home that, like in America, right? You buy it. For the most part, people buy homes, right? You go, like the vast majority of the time, it's a house that's built and so it's for sale, and now you buy that house and you live in that house, right?
I would say 75% are pre-built.
Only 15% of all house purchases in Japan were of existing houses. The rest, they create new homes.
That's so
85% of people when they buy a home are making a new home there. They either destroy the old one or they just get a new one built and do that. And even the one guy I know in Japan who is he's making a home. Like he's building it from scratch. He bought the plot. And that's just crazy because like the vast majority in Europe, United States, whatever, like homes are meant to be this appreciating asset forever. And in Japan, it's like this temporary thing that is not meant to appreciate.
I didn't know that until I looked into this. Like the common practice of like breaking those things down. I think there's also a part of this where the homes and the land that they're built on are actually owned separately.
Yeah.
So it is most common. Like if I were a homeowner in Japan, most homeowners in Japan, if you own an actual like home and not an apartment, own the land the home is built on. That is like the most common situation. But technically those things are disconnected. So you might lease the land itself, own the home that's built on it, and pay like a rental fee to the landowner. Which is something that happens. So I think
what if I own a home on a land that I'm leasing, then someone else buys the land from underneath me and says, I don't want you to have a home here anymore, and then
they destroy it.
They can't. Okay, so I don't think they can. You're saying if the landowner,
like, you're going to have a house, and I'm going to want to hurt you, so I'm going to buy the land underneath your home and then tell you to kick rocks.
Yeah, it's called freehold versus leasehold. So leasehold is you own the building, but you rent the land.
Yeah.
And freehold is you buy both. And so there's situations where you buy the property, the home on the land, but you don't own the land. And if that lease, but you usually get the lease for like decades. But if the lease ends and after 30 years of living there in this house, they don't want to renew the lease with you, you then have to leave and they can destroy the home, which is usually what happens. Because again, it sounds like they are just constantly taking down buildings and rebuilding them.
And I think this part of this like culture of like rebuilding and building in general is a huge part of like why supply has like managed to be so bountiful in a place like this, and like why they're not dealing with the same housing crisis.
Yeah, it's
like
tough.
They have other economic crises in Japan that are oncoming, right? But in comparison to like if you looked at a city like Sydney or Vancouver or New York, it's way, way different. And you'd expect Tokyo to be in a similar position to those places.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the best example I saw in a country not necessarily going through the exact same demographic crisis, which Japan is. So it's hard to disentangle them because their population is shrinking every year. So it's like houses are going to get cheaper regardless. But in like Austin, America, they changed the zoning laws to build more, and rents have been dropping dramatically. It's like down 22%.
Yeah, Austin is like the success story in the United States right now. If you build a lot of housing, even while the city population has been skyrocketing over the past 5 years, housing prices go down. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to let people build stuff.